This is a virtual community event on effective backlog refinement for remote teams. I'm guessing for the most part, we are all still in some kind of remote work from home situation. And we are happy to share some ideas with you and get some feedback as well. My colleague, Eric Landis, will be facilitating and leading the content of the session. He's a senior DevOps consultant with AgileThought. And my name's Dan Newman. I'm one of the senior Agile coaches here in our Transform practice. What we've got is a practice talk, so we want you to leave with some very specific action items that you can take with you and apply to your work world. So we're not just going to talk at you. We want this to be very engaging, and we'll show you a couple ways to do that in just a minute. So the way we're going to flow through is we're going to talk about what Scrum and backlog refinement means, or what backlog refinement means within the Scrum framework. I think there are some misconceptions that Eric will help dispel for us. We're curious to have you share some ways that you normally do your product backlog refinement. And then we'll get into some of the challenges and opportunities with doing it remotely. We'll give you some tips around those, and then we want to give you a chance to practice with one of the tools that we're going to introduce.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate your help. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you too. I'll be asking lots of questions of the participants. So cool. So backlog refinement. Let's see if I may need to, there we go. That's working out. So let's talk about backlog refinement. I assume most folks understand when I talk about product backlog refinement what we're talking about, but let's just back up. We're assuming Scrum, this is a Scrum term, and let's look, what does the Scrum guide actually say about backlog refinement? And as you can see here, we've got a nice little quote that it is the act of adding detail, estimates, and order to items in the product backlog. Is an ongoing process in which the product owner and development team collaborate on the details of the product backlog items. I would draw your attention here to ongoing process. That's something I think that is key when we talk about backlog refinement. We expect, a lot of times when we're teaching classes, we talk to people about when we first add an idea to the product backlog, it's kind of this big thing that we're not exactly sure how we're going to get it done. And as you get closer to actually working on that thing, it should become a much more smaller and concrete representation of work, an idea of work. And so that's that ongoing process we talk about in the Scrum Guide. The other thing I'll add, and I'll say it here a couple times, the Scrum Guide doesn't actually tell you exactly how to do the product backlog refinement. It leaves that up to the team. So again, the team, you know, we've talked about self-organized teams in Scrum. It's a very big process there. And really that's something that we want to do in refinement. So what do we do in product backlog refinement? We take that product backlog, so we're going to estimate things in the product backlog, and that's really a team effort, right? We're doing that typically as a team, or at least I'd like to have the team do that. Then we break features into smaller work units, and this is an activity that can be done by the product owner or the team as a whole. I'd like to throw that out and see, you know, if anybody has any different ways. Are you doing that in a different manner than having either the team or product owner working on that?
The work in the pipeline?
You're putting work in a pipeline?
No, your question was about who's doing which part of this.
Yeah, and breaking the features into smaller units. Are you typically doing that as a team? Is a product owner responsible for that, or somebody else?
For the teams I'm with, the development team and the product owner work together, because it seems that That's where the technical expertise on how it can be broken into smaller parts comes from, and that's not the strength of the product owner.
Oh, cool. Anybody else have anything different? So I know, and Dan might remember this when we worked together a long time ago, but we had a product owner, very, as you said, Amy, maybe not a detail person, very good at the high level stuff and making decisions, but not necessarily good at writing those details that a development team would want. So he used actually a business analyst who eventually they turned it into more of a mini product owner, if you will. I mean, it's a horrible name, right? But product owner who kind of worked together with the guy who is in charge of multiple products. And that's really how that came into being. So just the point is, there's a lot of ways to break features into smaller work units. And I think the important thing when we talk about backlog refinement is that the team is comfortable with what we're talking about on this what comes into the sprint and the stories or PBIs. And again, here, helping the team understand work in the pipeline, that's done in a lot of ways. I would say we typically do that in backlog refinement. Your sprint review is going to give the team and your stakeholders an understanding of that as well. So another part, Dan, I know you and I had talked a little bit about the features in the smaller work unit and who does that. Do you have any comments on that? Anything you want to add?
Who does the breaking down into the smaller work units? Yeah, when we were first talking about this, often it's the product owner who's perceived as the person who authors all the backlog items. And so the reason we don't say the product owner breaks features down into smaller work units here is because in the Scrum Guide, it advocates that anybody can contribute to the product backlog. And so this might be team members, development team members proposing some smaller items, could be stakeholders, could be any number of people who are contributing to the backlog and authoring those smaller items. So we don't want to make the product owner kind of the only person who's able to create items in that product backlog.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going is, the one thing we may not think about is stakeholders having access to this or helping out with this. So I think I mentioned this earlier, backlog refinement is not a Scrum event in the Scrum Guide. It is an ongoing activity, as we said earlier. And, the idea is it's going to help the PO sharpen the ideas from this amorphous kind of, I think this is going to work, into something that is valuable, that can be worked on and can be completed in a sprint, right? So when we get a PBI and the team commits to working on that in a sprint or forecasts they're going to finish that in the sprint, that goes to reason that the PBI needs to be smaller than whatever your sprint length is. So that's what we talk about when we talk about refinement and sharpening the idea. So, one of the guidance I give is that we shouldn't take more than 10% of the team's time. So do you have any other guidance? Is anybody doing anything different?
I think we probably do this about once a month, maybe as much as twice a month, but there's, it's only an hour, so it's not more than 10% of the team's time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got maybe an issue we're spending too much time in refinement. So we try to do it every other week. So the week that we don't have our Scrum ceremonies on, we'll have our backlog refinement and try to make sure we have enough work prep for the sprint that's coming up. And I think we end up going down into the weeds on stories and diving into technical details and talking about how we're going to implement it. So that hour-long refinement session turns to 2 hours, and we only got halfway through it, and now we're scheduling another one. So we're better than we were a year ago with it, but it's still spending, I think, too much time.
Been there, done that.
So you're talking about maybe diving a bunch into the how of the story versus refining the what and the acceptance criteria, I think is what I was hearing, Michael.
Doing that, and maybe even going off into edge cases too. And, you know, I mean, everybody has a complex product, right? So you start to find those little nuances where, well, hey, what if the user did this and these other 10 things? And those conversations can really snowball.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. So I think that's a great point. Is backlog refinement is about the acceptance criteria, how we're not how we're going to get it done, but what needs to be done. The how happens in the sprint planning. So that's always a good, you know, when we go down those rabbit holes, always a good way. And I'm sure, Michael, you're telling your team that, hey, we can maybe talk about that in the planning session, because that's what that's for. So that's some ways to get down on that, to help your teams focus on the actual refinement. Cool. Any other comments on this? So in the chat, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Let's tell me, we heard a couple of options. Somebody's doing this every month. Maybe give us 2 ways your teams are doing backlog refinement, whether it's in sprint planning or you have a separate session, maybe, or something else that would be great. And then if you can include any changes that being remote has brought into your team. Let's see that in chat. So I'll give you like 2 minutes.
So Amy says frequency 1 to 2 times per month per team. So it sounds like maybe a bigger program, including all the team members. And sizing before sprint planning.
Yeah, that's interesting estimation.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear more about the desired tweak and the why behind that, maybe once we give people a couple minutes to type in here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the rut of being remote, yes. We've got a 2-week cadence. Oh, down to weekly with COVID. All right. Crewing every other week to create AC and point the stories. At least staying a sprint ahead, it looks like.
That's good.
About an hour every week, one other person says. Yep. Refinement 2 days a month. This is interesting. I'm actually, this is information, not evaluation. These seem like much less than the 10% guidance. So that's not a bad thing.
Right.
That's just an observation from what I'm seeing show up in the chat.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah. Cool. So, we have a lot of variances. It looks like people are refining really during the sprint for sure. And we have, so some people have been doing remote already, so they're kind of used to that. I will say with COVID, it's probably a little bit differently, like when I heard the rut issue, that it's becoming kind of, the events are becoming kind of a rut. I understand that. So that's interesting. And it sounds like this maybe is working for you. I'm interested, I think we had here doing within the sprint right before the sprint planning, it sounded like. Was that, yeah, you do that before
Amy.
oh, I think this, I was looking at Shanita.
Oh, okay.
We have grooming sessions and before the planning session.
Yep,
So
I actually work with Mike, and for our team, we try to have grooming the week before, and during that, I will have the stories built as well as any wireframes and AC. We do grooming and estimation at that time. And then when we pull the items in the sprint, if we're working it there or during TCC and we need to refine or break apart stories more, we do it at that time.
Cool.
Yep.
That's good information. And it sounds like that there's some problems with doing this remotely as I'm looking through here, and Dan, feel free to jump in because I'm kind of just looking through these things here.
Yeah, I was kind of curious. Well, Amy had mentioned to ask the developers to story point before sprint planning, and seemed like they wanted to make a tweak there, and that was also paired with the remote. Seems to be in a rut. So Amy, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Based on what you were maybe recommending, that's what I'm thinking and making a tweak. So we would have a backlog grooming where we would ensure the story is well elaborated upon, and it's broken down into tasks, and it has a validation or acceptance criteria. But then we would ask between that session and the sprint planning for the developer, which sometimes they collaborate behind the scenes with others, but the developer to create the story points such that when we get back together for sprint planning, we have what we need to sprint plan. So we don't story point as a team. And I think if we were to do that, I would just need to extend the duration of the session because it just takes a little bit more time to do that.
Yep.
Understood. And the why for the sizing as a team is typically to resolve any misunderstandings. So if the developer, let's say, sizes something into a large or 13 if using story points or whatever the case might be, and the product owner was thinking that it was smaller, it's a chance to figure out what that discrepancy might be. So that's one of the benefits, the whys in having everybody to do it together, even though it does take longer, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to comment here. Tammy Volkert had said so many still refer to it as grooming versus refinement. Just as an FYI, the Scrum Guide made a change to refer to backlog refinement rather than grooming. I don't know if that was 1 or 2 versions ago, but just as an FYI. So good point there, Tammy. And Tammy says their team is doing even better remote for this meeting. There's more engagement. That's interesting.
Oh, can you, any tricks to share with how you've gotten better engagement?
Hold on, I was trying to turn everything on. I was shoving my face.
Sorry.
So our team, before, like, being in the room, in the conference room, it's like you have that one person who overpowers everybody. Not, just back and let that person show. You'd have one of those people that's like, yep, we need to do this, but I've put it back more on the team. So the product owner and I work very well together, and we have the team look at the stories. They're all engaging. We're making sure they're looking at the code so that we're getting all those answers, the questions answered, making sure it's very well understood, as well as everybody's participating, right? They're building out some of those tasks, even though it says, yeah, you want to wait to add your task at the planning session, right? But we still try to get a high level of some of those tasks. It just helps us size the story better and really think about, did we really capture everything? Do we truly understand what needs to be done? And we do that once every week. So it's how we build it up versus doing like a 2-hour, 3-hour session once every 2 weeks. It works better for us if we split that time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's some good stuff. to hear about. I'd like to hear that. So love to keep discussing this, but we're going to move on so we can get you out of here in our time box. You just gave us some techniques that plays nicely into this next slide, which are some techniques we've found as far as when would we do backlog refinement, what are we going to do in there. So I've used planning poker for estimation. We've used other types of mechanisms to help teams estimate. At some point, what I found is with planning poker, if you've used it, it's really good at first, and then teams get a little more mature and it becomes a little easier for them to estimate. And when that happens, that's kind of a nice thing. Your refinement sessions become a little easier. I've used weekly refinement sessions. I think I mentioned that, where we had a product owner and really a business analyst or an SME helping with the teams, or I've seen it where product owners, these are large projects where we needed to have a backlog for 17 teams, right? And that's a pretty big hole to fill, if you will, to have enough PBIs ready for the next sprint. So that's multiple product owners, subject matter experts, all working together, really working on backlog refinement with the team and without the team. And that's a lot of work. The sprint review, would we do refinement there? Well, when we talked about stakeholders, maybe, right? I could see that happening. And the last one we have, I'd be curious to know, is anybody doing any on-demand refinement? For instance, maybe after a daily Scrum, we're just, the PO's bringing something, maybe one or two PBIs and saying, hey, let's refine these.
I see a couple people in chat, Tammy and Cherie. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
She's my product owner. We were.
Nice. Well, it's good you're in agreement.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Is there any? So
I was going to say what I like about the on-demand thing is it saves some context switching. If the product owner's just authored some backlog items, or if the team has authored some backlog items, they want to review them with the product owner for ordering and sizing, things like that. It's better than putting it down and some 3, 4, or 5 days later you pick it back up and try to remember what you had in mind. So I love that. And then throwing some items in during the sprint review can be pretty handy too when they're named, even if they're placeholders for later refinement.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. So some drawbacks for the product owner currently, and this is really in this COVID time, and maybe you're not getting these. We've heard that doing this remotely has helped in these refinement sessions, but remotely the PO has to get feedback from stakeholders a little differently. So stakeholders, I think they will respond a little better face-to-face. It's a little harder when I'm in a sprint review and I want to get feedback from them. I find it harder when I'm online to monitor, facial expressions when we're talking about this is important, and it just makes that a little harder for me. I think, stakeholders really, I'm not running to them in the hallway, right? I have to be very intentional if I'm the product owner to get their feedback. Maybe I've already done that, but I'm just saying in this instance, as in all things, we have to be a little more intentional to make our interactions with others happen. It's also, like I said, much harder to judge actual intentions in the reviews and what the stakeholders are wanting. And I think refinement with the team must be more intentional. We talked about maybe making time after daily scrums. I think that's helpful. Like Dan said, context switching, we don't have to do a lot of that. And we keep the team together. I know I've been on a team recently where we just had to schedule a time where we all got together, could see each other in a Teams meeting and hash through some things around the PBIs. So again, to me, it's intentionality. Do you have anything to add to that, Dan?
I think the thing that jumped out to me, and actually Sylvie put it in chat, was they usually do have their videos on, so that solves some of the nonverbal communication you're mentioning. And they indicated that everyone's paying more attention to the details, participating more, and it sounds like they bribe them with a happy hour after the session to stay and participate. So I'm digging the happy hour.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Sylvie, were you doing a happy hour when you were live and in person as well, or is this a remote only?
Everyone will have their drinks on the side, but no one will drink unless we have accomplished the goal for the grooming session. So everyone is always eager to come into the grooming now than before, because due to COVID, we've actually learned different ways of communicating, getting everyone on the same page during the grooming session. Not only the grooming, but every other event in the Scrum. The teams are more collaborative now, and they're performing pretty well than they used to before. They would just come into the room and they would just wait for the moment to be over. But now they're staying longer on the call, which is really amazing to be in those teams.
That's
awesome.
Quite something.
Yeah. Good stuff.
We've had a few people on the team that have been remote. Like we're almost all face-to-face. But there's been like one or two people, and now, another team we brought on from Brazil, and they've kind of intermixed in with some other teams. We've got a mix of now remote and face-to-face folks. But this whole COVID thing has forced us all to, I think, interact differently. And as part of that, we're including those remote people way more than we would before. So you mentioned the happy hour. We get together a couple times a day for 15 minutes just to talk about whatever. But we've also tried to do, a couple happy hour things or something at the end of a release to celebrate. And I feel like where before you'd only experience that if you were in the office. Now we're really bringing everybody in. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to take from this remote period that we'll have to carry with us even when we're back in the office.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've experienced because I've always been a remote employee, and have noticed that, you get the email, hey, we're having a happy hour on site in Tampa, and well, I'm in Indiana or Denver, so it's not super helpful for me. So it's nice now, you see that we're learning a little bit more. People are seeing how it is to work remote. So hopefully that, like you said, that'll carry over when we get a little bit more back to normal, where we understand that there's some things that'll be helpful for the remote folks. Cool. Anything else we want to talk about?
I think Nicole is yes-anding that. Now that everybody is remote, that seems to have increased the collaboration. I think that's a feature of leveling the playing field. You don't have a room of 7 people now and you're the lone person who's remote. It's very much a level playing field. There aren't things on the whiteboard you can't see. There aren't sidebar conversations you can't hear. Yeah, love it.
Exactly.
Yes from Tammy. Yeah.
Yeah. Just hopefully, next year when everything's back to normal, people don't forget, right? If that happens. All right. So I had this named 2 things you find difficult refining remotely with team. I feel like we've kind of discussed that, so I'm going to skip through that and hopefully get to the next slide. There we go. Oops. Let's see if I can reverse this. The lag, right? Oh, come on. There we go. The lag on this is ridiculous. It's my Verizon. what would you call this? My Verizon hotspot here.
Yep.
All right. All right, cool. So we're going to do a remote refinement practice session. Just see how it works. See what you think. We're using a tool called planningpokeronline.com, not planningpoker.com, because that everybody has to sign up and it's a little bit more involved. So this will be a little bit easier. Oops, I think Dan was maybe trying to copy that.
Dan was. Hold on.
Go
Go
ahead.
the curtain for a minute. Oh, geez, this is turning into a train wreck.
It's all right. So Dan's going to copy this in there. Basically, let me give you a little background around the PBIs we're going to talk about here. We basically have, and in the meantime, feel free to copy it, Dan. We won't even watch you. Cool.
It's copied.
But basically, nice. Way to go, dude.
It's copied. It's in the chat, and I don't know if you're still seeing PowerPoint or not, but
I am.
Oh, good. Zoom worked. Bonus.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and go back one slide if I can. Here we go. There we go. There we go. So basically, this is something called Parts Unlimited is the name of the site. And the site is where I can buy some different tires, stuff for cars, right? An online car shop, if you will. And so we've already have the site is up. We're doing some more work, adding some more features to it. I will give you, the next slide will contain kind of an idea of existing PBIs we've done and kind of what what we estimated those at as a team. And then we'll go into a session where I, as a product owner, will talk about the PBI. We'll let you all do an estimation session, and then we can talk about that. And we'll be using this planning poker on time. Uh-oh, some people are getting blocked from their firewall. So we'll see.
So maybe
we'll
we
see
can
how
just
it
share the
works.
screen there. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
maybe
a gambling site. Oh no.
That's right.
Okay. We will come up. We'll have a chance to explore that.
So the poker keyword is not blocking. That's what happens, right? All right. So everybody ready to try this? You excited? So as you can see, we've got with these completed PBIs, just to give you a sample. As we want Azure Machine Learning to provide, and that's cut off. So let's see if I can find that. But basically, we wanted it to provide some algorithm to predict what the person wanted next when they came shopping next based on their previous habits. So that's that particular story, and you'll see the level of effort was 2. Wow, that seems kind of low to me, but cool. They must be really good with machine learning. The second one, we provide customers with the ability to track their package, which is very cool, right? That was a 2, and so on. So we've got some A/B tests. We've got a navigation bar story and a search bar. So those are all completed, and you can see, we've gone from 2 to 5 to 3, that kind of thing. So is everybody in the site? And I see if I can go to that one. Yeah, it looks like we've got quite a few people in there. That's great. Let's go to PBI 1. We'll do 2 of these sessions just to see what it's like. As a customer, I would like to save my addresses so I can easily select the address for delivery. So basically, kind of like an Amazon, right? We want to be able to have multiple shipping addresses so that I can go back, and if I want it to go to a different address, that's easily done. So seems like a very easy PBI. I don't know what you guys think, but any questions on that from the team?
Is this a product that is global? So there would be global addresses?
Oh, great question. No, this is just US only right now.
Do I have the ability to set a primary address?
Yeah.
So would I be
like that, yes.
required to set a primary one? Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Is that multiple product to multiple addresses or one product to multiple address? Like just I'm asking single product to multiple address, like group of single product to multiple address, or different type of product chosen by a customer in a single cart, okay, and bought, and so different type of product to send to the different addresses.
So if you're saying, they can have multiple addresses, and right now it's just multiple addresses.
And for multiple products for the same customer.
Yeah, like so
Yeah,
Amazon sometimes.
Customer.
Yeah, sometimes I send Amazon stuff to, like, gifts to family in New Mexico. Sometimes they come to my house. Those types of scenarios. I think maybe it'd be that type of question.
Right, and think about this. So I'm in Florida for 2 weeks, and I want something delivered to my Florida address, not my regular address. That would be kind of the scenario, right? That would be one of the scenarios. But I still want my old address there, right? So I can select either one.
So I'm going to do something. One of the features of Planning Poker Online is that it lets anybody do anything. And so I'm going to click Start New Game and clear out the votes. And then when you choose your card, please don't click the Show Cards button. So we'll let the cards collect.
Exactly.
Yep. But the joy is you can get in here without registering. That's why we picked this versus, I think, Mike Cohn, Mountain Goat Software, planningpoker.com.
Yeah.
Is because you would have to set up an identity there. So you have great power. Use it very carefully.
That's right. So we're waiting for a couple people. Amy, let's see. What time is it really getting? All right. So hopefully you're all there. I'm going to click Show Cards. Let's see. Ooh, Dan has a question mark. We don't have anything higher than 5. And, Shanita has a 2. So Dan, what's your question?
Oh, Dan forgot what our comparison sizes were because he was multitasking. I was trying to shorten the URL, so I didn't have the size. Yeah.
He's honest, at least. Okay, I thought we were gonna have. You could have faked it, man.
I could have.
Yeah. Shanita, why do you think it's easy? I mean, it's a 2.
I think it's a 2 because I think for the first phase out, it's an MVP, right? So that even though your other things, when people were asking questions and you were saying, in the future we may do this, we may do that. So to me, in my mind, it was, I want something that I can store one address and maybe build on in the future. And that would be an MVP for me. And I just had faith in my developers.
So just to be clear, I want to store multiple addresses, right? So I want to be able to save multiple addresses. And if that wasn't clear, would that change what you're saying?
Nope.
No? Okay.
I had a 2 as well. I made the assumption as part of that you can already enter an address, right? So I thought this was, I can enter an address before, but now I want to be able to store multiple addresses or store more than one where I was storing one before. So I thought, there's probably going to be some work to restructure how we store this in the database. Maybe not if we were already, storing it in a way that would work, but really the UI was there for it. It probably wouldn't be a ton of change to allow you to select from a couple different options that you have stored or to enter some new ones.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Any other comments? Like typically we would go ahead and redo this. Oh, I see. Wow. But I'd like to get to the next PBI just to give you one more flavor for a different story and see how that goes. So let's click. There we go. Oh my. So I may have forgot to add this, but as a customer, I would like to have the ability to send my items as gifts, using a gift card, so that we can have a different revenue stream from our customers.
So you're talking about selling using a gift card payment option, not sending something without, let's say, the price information on it.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, everybody's doing it. Seems like.
And I'll click start a new game here. So now that we're talking about a new card.
So any questions on this? I mean, everybody's doing it. Must be pretty easy to do, I think.
Yeah. Excuse me, just one question.
Yeah.
Gift card may be of different times. Like one is for discounted gift card. Like if one card is for, like if I am purchasing a gift card, it will activate when I am purchasing another product from that same site, so that the price is reduced. Another gift card for that which I can use anywhere.
Yeah, we don't want any price reduction. I don't want any price reduction, man. What I'm hoping, is that people buy gift cards and they don't use them all, so we get even extra money. So,
yeah,
I mean, I don't hope that, but that's typically that happens, right? So, so yeah, we're not doing any discounts.
Does this include being able to accept the gift cards as a form of payment, or just the ability to kind of buy it and ship it out?
No, both. Yeah, we want to accept them as payments as well.
What's the minimum amount for a gift card?
Oh, a very good question. I'm going to say $10.
So my question is, do you have set amounts for gift cards that a user can only choose $10, $15, $25, or is it also a custom amount?
They can do a custom amount. Money's money, so I'm down with that. Down with any amount. It's got to be over 10. 10 or over, I should say.
Is there a maximum?
Heck no.
Can you do multiple gift cards in one transaction?
No, let's just start out with one.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
And one more thing, if the minimum amount is 10 and whatever is the maximum amount, what is the multiplication? Like but the next card will be a multiplication of 10 or multiplication of 2, like the first is 10, next 20, then the 40, etc. Or any amount after 10.
It's any amount after 10.
Okay.
They could give you $10.01. That's fine.
So this is buying a gift card. Is this also using a gift card during payment?
Yes. Yeah. We want to
So
accept them.
can a user use their gift card and also pay with an additional payment? So if I had a $15 gift card, okay.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so I think it's time. I've got to look at this. So let's estimate. Don't click show cards. So you estimate. And I, as a product owner, am estimating too, so it's probably a no-no. All right. I think we've got one more, maybe Nicole. Not trying to call you out. But there we go. I'm going to show the cards. Got some 13s. Somebody has a 34. So we'll maybe cross mine out, but nobody. I had the 34, yeah. We have some 13s though. Those are the kind of the high ones. So we'll have one quick comment on this, and then I think we're going to have to move on. But Mike or Sanjay, why do you say 13?
Issuing it and then accepting it as payment. Both of those together for me were really big. Thought it could be split out. Accepting it as payment, I mean, having to validate against whatever you have stored, and it's likely not just a simple number and balance, right? It's going to require a little more security.
Yep. Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going in this. So, hopefully, to me, no matter whether we're doing this remotely or we're doing a refinement session in person or some kind of combination, I don't care so much about the numbers. What I care about is that we're talking about things like what you just mentioned, Mike, hey, this should be split into 2 stories. I mean, to me, that would make total sense, right? Or maybe even more. Because if I was a team member having to code that, I would certainly give it a high number, because I think it's very large. Cool. So let's move on. I know we've got a lot of comments, but we're getting close. So I want to respect your time box. So that's kind of what we have on backlog refinement. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. I think our emails are here at the end, right, Dan, or somewhere?
They
if not,
are.
We can post them.
Yes, they
Awesome.
are.
Yep. So coming up, we have remote collaboration for business people and developers. And if you want to see some other old webinars, just go to our library. The URL is right here. And then we have our retrospective, and I think Dan's posting that in the chat. Unless
Dan
you
will
can
do that
copy
momentarily.
So give us some feedback on this, and hopefully, like I said, it was very helpful for you. And there it is. Oh, as usual.
You're going backwards? Okay,
double
perfect.
clicked. Yeah, there we go. There we go. There's our emails.